The final day of the Sailing Champions League Final 2019 here in St Moritz. Good morning, my name's Andy Rice, this is Mark Corky Rhodes, and right behind us, Corky, the boats are going sailing. It's going to be the end of qualifying, 3 flights left to do, and then we're into that big 4-boat final later on this afternoon.
Yeah, with 3 flights left, this is the time where everything's going to matter. All of those points, you throw one bad race into that, and that's going to put you out of this final. So a lot of pressure on these top teams. Boats going out now. The breeze is superb. We've got glorious conditions here in St Moritz. This is the conditions they've all been talking about. Bright sunshine. We've probably got about 16, 17 knots of breeze already out on that race course. Mirror flat water. So these boats are going to fly. It's going to be a really, really superb final day.
The amazing thing was, 20 minutes ago there was no breeze, and it's just kicked in. It's like Lake Garda, but even more so. It's only 10:30 in the morning, and we've got good breeze. It's what the locals promised us, and it looks like it's come good.
St Moritz magic, isn't it? Like, as I say, this is what they've talked about. We've had good breeze actually over the last 3 or 4 days, but not with necessarily bright sunshine. Now, for the final day, for this, where the decider and who's going to be crowned the champion, we couldn't ask for any better conditions. Champagne yachting.
So let's have a look at the leaderboard. We've got the Danes Kallavik Badelaug on 1 point ahead of Norddeutsche Regatta Verein as we go in this morning. And then we've got Kongelige Dance Yacht Club also from Denmark in 3rd place. We've got the Australians in 4th, followed by another German team, followed by the Swiss and the Italians, all with a chance of getting in. So things might have changed quite significantly later on, but at the moment looking good for the Danes.
Well, we're 2 Danish teams in the mix, you know. Out of all of the races, they've stayed consistent. They've thrown in the odd duff result, but actually it's been at the time that the other teams have done it. So they've not really felt the full effect of having a bad race. So far, the Danish have been solid. I'd be surprised if you didn't see at least one of those teams in the final, if not maybe 2 of them.
Yeah, well, that's what it's looking like at the moment. It's going to be a very international lineup for that final, one way or the other. So we can't wait to get into the action, and we will be bringing all of it to you throughout the day. Don't know about you, Corky, but I'm still a little bit seasick from the pontoon just now. But here we're back in our studio now, and we cannot wait to get into the action. These teams are mixing it up almost to perfection, not for their sakes, but for us, because the points are so close between the top few. Corky, if you had to pick anyone to go through to the final right now, who would you say?
Well, Kallavik Badelaug have just done such a performance throughout the last sort of 3-4 days. We've seen those jinxes come in, and they've had a tough race, but actually so's everybody else. But they've been the ones that have kind of, taken that punch, gone, right, okay, well, we're back into business, and then next race come back hard again, and so have always held on to their form. Norddeutsche Regatta Verein have really led a bit of a charge over the last sort of few days. Yesterday was a real kind of, we call it moving day, and that was exactly it. They made a big move up the leaderboard and put themselves in contention. Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron very much still in the mix. A nice race win in the last flight, so seem to have found their form with a nice bit of sunshine. As you can see, the boats are out racing. This is race 2 of flight 17. So at the moment, it's, you know, I think you're going to potentially end up with certainly a Danish team, a German team, potentially an Australian team, and then the question will be whether it'll be another Danish team, another German, a Swedish or a Swiss. So it's all sort of to go in and have a little play. But lots of excitement out on the water. As you can see, this is the second race of Flight 17 and gorgeous conditions. So we'll get out onto the water shortly.
One of those competing in this race, which we'll come back to you with shortly, is KSSS from Sweden, and I did an interview with Bjorn Hansen earlier. Bjorn Hansen is with me. He's skipper of the KSSS team from Sweden. Bjorn, it's always tough racing here. You've got some experience of racing here in the match racing. How much has that helped you?
I think it helped us quite a lot, actually. I mean, we know that anything can happen on this lake. And that's good to remember, always to remember that even if you're 99% sure that the left-hand side will pay off, it's always someone coming up from the right-hand side. So that's something that we have learned from the match racing for sure. But I mean, still with conditions like this, it's a perfect arena, and I can't think of a better place to have the finals like this.
Now, those starts are really, really difficult. There's space at the pin end, and you can start fast at the pin end, but then you're being dictated to as to when you might get your first tack in, or you fight it out with the traffic at the committee boat end. Have you reached a conclusion about what the right solution is?
Well, it's actually a little bit different from race to race, but as you say, if you start to leeward, you really have to squeeze off all the windward boats to be able to come over or wait for that left-hand shift. And with this wind more from the right, it's very seldom that left-hand side pays off. So that's why we at least like to be a little bit further up to the windward side of the line.
And that certainly seems to be the way. If you can come off the committee boat end and manage to win a decent spot off the windward end, then you're in good shape. You're looking like you're one of the contenders to get into the final four. Now, I don't believe that you will have raced in that format before, but what do you think it's going to be like, and how much will the tactics change when it's you against 3 other teams?
Well, it will definitely be different, and I'm happy that we have just 4 J70s in our club back home, so I'm quite used to the 4-boat racing with the J70s, but I must say that we still have a really, really long way to go to get into that top 4. I mean, we had a very bad day yesterday, so we need to shape up. We're very happy about this last win, but hopefully we can squeeze in to the top 4. I mean, we can see that everyone is down in 7-8 sometimes. It's just about keeping your lowest level high enough to not lose too many points.
It really almost doesn't matter if you do win a race. So often we see a race winner, and I don't want to jinx you because you did win a race, but so often we see a race winner that then in the next race finishes 7th or 8th. Yeah. How does it happen like that?
Well, you know, the margins are so small. I mean, we just have like a 150-meter upwind after the start, and everyone is gathered at the top mark. So the approach there is so important. And when the shifty wind, everything changes in 5 seconds. So it's very hard to plan your entry into the top mark, and that's pretty much of the race. And the hoist after that top mark to position yourself compared to the other boats. And no, it is really tricky, and I'm not jealous about being the tactician on board. I'm happy to be the helmsman, because, you know, it's always like that. When you win, you always get the credit as a helmsman, and when we do bad, it's a tactician that gets the blame. So I don't want to be the tactician.
That's why you sit at the back.
That's why.
Claiming all the glory. Well, we wish you all the luck and all the glory, and we hope the tactician doesn't have to take too much of the flak for the rest of the regatta here, Bjorn. Best of luck.
Thank you very much. He's doing a great job. Mattias Hermansson is his name, and he's doing a hell of a job. I just want to say that. Thank you.
All right. Thanks very much. Bjorn Hansen just completed a race, but it wasn't the result he was looking for. Corky, how did they get on? Because they were doing well early on in that race just now.
So, yeah, we were just watching. That was race number 50. So, but race 2 of Flight 17, and exactly what you were just saying, Andy. Bjorn Hansen was up in 3rd place at that first mark, but slipped back and ended up with a 6th overall. So that's our overall standings. And so we were looking at KSSS in 6th place overall after picking up that 6th place in Flight 17. So that could have been 3 points better, which would have still kept them in a little bit of snapping distance of that magic 4.
Basically, we're halfway through Flight 17, and then we got Flight 18, which will be the end of racing. So teams like KSSS only have one more opportunity, and they have a mathematical chance of going through. But at the moment, as it stands, the top 4, as we look at it, do have a bit of a jump on the rest. But of course, we need to fill in some of the gaps because we're only halfway through Flight 17. So things are not looking quite as good for Norddeutsche Regatta Verein and Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron as it appears now, because they've still got to do their Flight 17 race.
Yeah, correct. So those gaps in that leaderboard are just identified that they haven't raced. So this leads us perfectly on to race number 3 in Flight 17. We can see that of Norddeutsche Regatta Verein in 2nd place are going to be racing, along with Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron in 3rd, and Pirogova in 5th as well. So we got 3 teams in that top 5 that are going to be racing this next race. And so, of course, those points haven't been added to yet. So they need to, certainly for Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron and Norddeutsche Regatta Verein, they need to be at least in those sort of top 2-3 boats to secure decent enough points to keep them still in that top 4. So that's what everyone's looking for, as Andy said, and to reconfirm that, we've got one more flight after this race. So a flight is the 3 additional races that each team gets to try and lock themselves in, and all the teams are trying to do is get into that magic 4. So you need to be in that 4 to go through into the final. And so that's the most important one.
So the stadium in the background, and that will be filling up throughout the day. We've got amazing sunshine, as you can see, and the wind filled in like clockwork from being mirror flat this morning. We've got just a few minutes until the start of the next race.
The next race is presented by Uvia.
So back on the water, the team's getting some Jenica training in, just practicing a few manoeuvres with the sails. They get very little practice time, so every time they get out on the water and they get in these boats, they use every moment they have available for some practice. You can see the gusts trickling down the middle of the lake. And we're into 3 minutes before the start, and we have got some interesting teams lined up here for this race. So Corky in boat 1, we have Wassersport Verein Hemelingen. Then in boat 2, St. Petersburg Yacht Club from Russia. Boat 3 is Pirogovo from Russia. Boat 4, Norddeutsche Regatta Verein from Germany. Club Nautique de Vassois from Switzerland in boat 5. Boat 6 are the Dutch from Almer Central. Boat 7 is Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron. And boat 8 is Württembergische Yacht Club from Germany. And the 2 boats that we particularly are watching out for are the Norddeutsche Regatta Verein in boat 4, who are 2nd overall in the standings, and the Australians Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron in boat 7. We're on board with the Dutch, and now we are looking at the line with 2 minutes to go. You can see the Dutch sailors just getting their timings on their watch perfectly down. And just behind is Norddeutsche Regatta Verein. Now, last night, Corky, we were sitting at dinner in Badrut's Palace. You can see it top of screen there with the very high spire behind it. We had a gala dinner there. We were sitting with the Australian team, and one of the observations of the Australian team was just how risky the Norddeutsche Regatta Verein starts are. They pull them off most of the time, but they tend to go for very risky committee boat end starts, whereas the Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron tends to start a little bit further down the line. So look for the purple boat, the Australians, to start further down the line. Look for the light green boat, boat 4, to start very close to the committee boat. Be interesting to see if those patterns play out as we expect them to.
Well, it was interesting, as you say, Norddeutsche Regatta Verein really were playing, there's a big risk and reward in sailing. It's, and it's just like gambling or anything else, is that how much risk, the potential of the reward is greater, but certainly in these really high pressured sort of moments where the points really matter, it's how do you want to put yourself in that kind of risk for any need. This start is so important that why are you going to give away 3-4 boat lengths straight away at the start line by just trying to put yourself in a higher risk manoeuvre? So instantly we can see no one's really racked up into the cowboy zone just above that committee boat. They're all a little bit nestled in the middle. Norddeutsche Regatta Verein in the middle of the line, if not closer towards this pin end. Here we are, number 4. So number 7 is the Aussies. They are tucked up in that middle section of the line, so just a boat separating them. Pirogova just back in that navy blue boat, number 3 as well. So creeping up to the line to make sure that...
Versoix getting very close to the start. It looks like boats are going to be breaking the start line. There surely must be an individual recall. We'll wait and see if anyone... can you see the recall flag? No, I don't see it. I thought that there were some boats very close to the line there. The Aussies had a bad start, and they have been forced to tack away onto port tack already, and completely contrary to what I just said about Norddeutsche Regatta Verein. Here they are, boat number 4. They didn't start at the committee boat, and they are the most far left boat. So this is very different tactics. It makes for a more conservative start, but now it gives the Germans, it gives Toby Schadoval an awful lot of work to do, because boat number 4 is being dictated to by boat 6 just to windward, and particularly by St. Petersburg Yacht Club, boat number 2, who's made a fantastic start.
Yeah, they're in a really quite tricky position now, they're reliant. Now they've got that little bit of breathing space, but they're still pinned towards this left, so now this is their opportunity to come back. Pirogova just coming past there, we can see sort of them just drop in behind as the German team, Norddeutsche Regatta Verein, just getting in across there. So for St. Petersburg Yacht Club, that's a great tack and a good manoeuvre for them to be able to tack and get across in front of those boats. What a nice manoeuvre to bring themselves back into contention. But yeah, it's a really difficult place, certainly for the other German team, boat 8. See, when you're on this starboard tack, you're pinned into towards this left-hand side, so you're being dictated a little bit by the rest of the teams coming back. But the interesting one is, Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron hard over towards this right-hand side and this shoreline. Look on a really nice right lift though, they've got a good bit of height, and we've seen this, loads of teams come in on port really late at that windward mark and end up putting themselves in a high risk position to pick up a penalty. Question is, are they going to be in a good enough lane, and how many boats are going to be able to go across in front of them and give them dirty air?
So Hemmelingen doing really, really well in the black boat in boat number 1, but coming across boat number 8 also looking strong. That's another German team, Württembergische Yacht Club, looking like they're leading the pack. And boat number 4, one of the ones we're watching very closely, Norddeutsche Regatta Verein, has managed to pull out into second place. So a good recovery from potentially quite a difficult start for Norddeutsche Regatta Verein. So it's looking very close between the two boats that we're interested in, because boat number 7 is just about to... is boat number 3? No, there's going to be a collision, and the Aussies are forced to go head to win. That surely will be a penalty for boat number 3. That's Pirogovo from Russia, but that's going to be very little consolation to the Australians, who were really had their nose put out of joint by the Russians. So that's very unfortunate for the Australians that the Russians barged in there. And look at Pirogovo making a mess of their penalty, almost getting in the way of some of the other boats. So that's really opened up the gap for the front two teams.
And that's probably one of the most frustrating things is you didn't get the penalty, but someone else that's then decided to force their way through ends up impacting your race radically. So as you said, for the Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron, they got pinned hard up towards the wind and had to shoot the breeze just simply to be able to avoid a collision, which is exactly in the rules that you got to do. But now they've been dragged right back here. So Toby Shadowalt in boat number 4 there, we can see plenty of breathing space from this little cluster there. So Norddeutsche Regattaverein just skipping forward and getting a little bit of an escape out. So I felt he was pretty lucky in that sort of windward mark. Came in, all looked a bit tight, but that breeze filtered out, went soft on that right-hand side, and it just allowed him to keep a bit of momentum across and get that tack in before that little bundle happened behind. And so here's your lead team. Hard down on that Jenica to let it blow through. Strange sort of technique. I wouldn't have necessarily gone with that. I would have said there's enough breeze to literally go straight through on that. There was we've got about 12 knots of breeze. I know it's a little bit softer. Shadowalt and his team there, but more sort of a standard jibe you'd expect by letting that kite blow through and then coming back down hard on it. It was like the Württembergian Yacht Club were literally kind of pinning that kite down as if there was like 20 knots. It was trying to stall that kite and then let it blow through rather than actually just allowing it to stop it twisting. But really interesting, the two different techniques that are going on. But look at the gaps that are opening up on the racecourse.
And it's Germans holding the top 3 spots right now. Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron was in 3rd place. It looks like Wassersport Verein Hemelingen has moved up into 3rd place, so that's not good news for the Australians. It is good news for Norddeutsche Regattaverein holding 2nd in this race right now. The Aussies can't afford to drop any more places. They need ideally to make a couple of places up. That's with our leaders, Württembergische Yacht Club, getting the Jenica down, ready to round. Looks like they're going to jibe round and go round the left mark at the bottom of the screen. And what will Norddeutsche? They're going to follow round because the other mark looks some distance away. So down come the Aussies with the purple kite. So they're in a fight for 3rd and 4th, and they're in a good spot to follow the leaders round to the favoured mark, which seems to be a little bit closer. That's the Australians getting the Jenica down now. Charlie Alexander already full hiking as they turn around that mark. Really good rounding by the Australians, whilst out the other side go Hemelingen, the only boat to go round the other mark so far. And then rounding on Pirogovo, I think that's Pirogovo, boat number 6. No, that's the Dutch in boat number 6.
Interesting sort of, again, big separation, but you can see how disturbed the water gets from, just a few ribs blasting around. A lot of those are umpire ribs and stuff, but it's really a lot lumpier down at this part of the lake. Sort of, even though we've got this breeze, it flattens off from literally where we are in the commentary booth from that second half of it. Good depth to it, but suddenly it does start to get that little bit of a chop on, and as soon as you hit that, then that can cause problems. We've got the Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron here, and see the guys hiking out, just trying to flatten that boat off, drive as much power through the rig as possible. Currently sat in 4th place at the moment, and again, just
wow, that was quite a tack there, wasn't it?
That was very, very fast. So straight out. So Zach, who's on bow, we were having a good chat with last night. Again, quite happily put his hands up for the awful mistake that happened with their kite yesterday. There was quite a lot of entertainment from the team. They're all quite happy to put their hands up and say, look, we made a mistake. So Zach and Charlotte on the bow said they made a clear fluff of that, and then between David and Finn, they said they made a mistake on the start line on the next start, so they're all quite happy to own up for it.
Meanwhile, it looks like Hemelingen did the right thing by going to the far mark, sailing extra distance because they found more breeze on the right-hand side, and now they're dictating third spot to the Aussies, who are back in fourth. So the Aussies followed the leaders around, but it proved to be the wrong choice of gate mark for the Australians, who are now back in fourth with 3 German teams in front of them. Looks a little bit soft for the leaders at bottom left of picture. Having said that, they are still full hiking, so maybe it's just perspective.
Well, the interesting bit was there was that shift over towards that right-hand side, towards that top mark. So it was an advantage to that right-hand side, but the breeze softened a lot quicker in that corner. So actually you were better off staying in a bit more pressure and accepting that you're on more of a headed tack than you were to go in that soft. So if we look at boat number 4 here, which is Norddeutsche Regatta Wein, they're coming in on that shore side, and they've made a nice little gain on their fellow countrymen just out in front. But this is where the breeze went soft, so the question will be, is there going to be a hard cover going straight in? So we're going to see this tack. Big angle changes. You look at sort of the curve that are now coming on. There's the hard cover. So now Tobias Shadowwild just has to sit in the sturdy air unless he decides to go back out again and clear it. But it's taking him further up over that ley line.
Well, he has at least closed the gap on the leader, and you could see on those tracers on the tracking that although they sail parallel tacks, the tack was better for the port tack was better for boat number 4 than boat number 8, Württembergische Yacht Club. But it looks like Württembergische Yacht Club have made that ley line quite comfortably. It won't be a comfortable ley line for Norddeutsche Regatta Verein. So will they have to do a double tack, or are they going to shoot the mark? It's going to be a little bit difficult. No, they have tacked. So it's going to be another quick tack back. It's not really going to hurt them too much because there's quite a gap back to third place right now, which is still Hemelingen, which will be more good news for the Germans that we're looking at here, because the German 1-2-3 means that Australia is currently back in fourth place.
And this is, again, all playing out for this team here, the Deutsche Regatta Verein. I say, getting a solid second place, again, really just holds them in that sort of final 4. Again, we've got one final flight, so it could all... Oh, that was a tight...
Oh, that was a bit tough from Hemelingen, not giving a lot of space there to boat number 3. But now boat number 3 surely crashes in round the mark ahead of boat number 2. So
3 is Pirogova again, and oh no, umpires are happy with that. Green flag, let that one go. But cool. It's the Russians really forcing everyone off course at that top mark, and either the pressure's starting to push in, or they're just going for every little bit of advantage they can.
Yeah, I would say they were chancing their arm there, and they managed to get away with the green flag, but a little bit cowboy by the Russians at that windward mark. Meanwhile, we're with Norddeutsche Regatta Verein still in second. They've held second place pretty much all the way in this race. And bear in mind, it was a very different approach to the start that they made. They were the boat closest to the pin end, very different to what we've seen in previous races with their high-risk committee boat end starting. And they're still attacking for first place. Württembergische Yacht Club still looking a little bit vulnerable, but there you see the orange pin, and there you see the finish line. And it is going to be a win for Württembergische Yacht Club. Germany looking like they're going to take the top 3 spots in this race.
So again, Tobias Shadowwild on Norddeutsche Regatta Verein. Won't be too disheartened by that, because again, the most important thing is getting into this final 4. Yes, if he can close the gap on that first place, it's all going to matter. But as we see, Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron, they're going to be coming in with the pink sails, will take 4th. That will just, again, squeeze the points. It keeps them in that top 4. But they're right on that borderline now. So if a little slip in any of the other races could see them just drop out of that 4.
So Pirogovo, then St. Petersburg Yacht Club, and then it looks like Versoix has come in just ahead of Almere Central, the Dutch bringing up the rear in that race. So a very competitive race, very close between front and back in that race. And that is the conclusion of Flight 17. So we will bring up the leaderboard hopefully at some point soon, because we'll get a real representation of what's going on. So we'll come back to you with a leaderboard shortly once that's confirmed, because it's going to look pretty interesting seeing who's in the top 4 and who's just knocking on the door of the top 4. So Toby Shadowval has proven to himself that there is a different way of getting off the start line and still getting a good result, getting a second place, but it doesn't look easy. There is the leaderboard. Just talk us through it, Corky.
Well, exactly, sort of, now a little bit of a points gap opening up again for Kalavik Badalag, where we've seen that just consistency again. Look at those last sort of 4 races, 2, 1, 3, 3, just staying in that top sort of 3, not picking up any major points. It's just giving them a little bit of wiggle room. But we know that, you finish last in one of these races and scoop up 8 points, or if you got disqualified or something else and picked up 9, then, everything from the mathematical side is it really opens up a lot to people. On the Deutsche Regattaverein, Tobias Shadowval really started to drive things forward over the last yesterday. Look at 3 first places, then picked up a bit of a duff one in that one just this morning. So now found to settle back in with that second place and keeping himself firmly in contention for that 4. Another Danish. Kongeliga Dansk Yacht Club, again, not a great one in that Flight 16, but then a stronger one back in Flight 17. But again, if you look at those top 4, top 5 boats, they're all there and thereabouts with the points. A little bit of a gap back to Bjorn Hansen and his team in KSSS. From Sweden with 62 points. So, but again, remember there is no discards available. So all you could do is, if you take those numbers and you bolt on 8 points to everybody, that will decide who and where people are at going into this final flight.
Well, earlier I did an interview with Charlie Alexander representing the Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron. So let's hear what she had to say. Charlie Alexander is part of the team from Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron, all the way over from Australia. No one has ever travelled so far to come to the Sailing Champions League final. Charlie, how's it gone for you so far? We've been pretty impressed for you non-J70 sailors.
Yeah, it's been a quite interesting regatta so far. We've been, we haven't done any training in Australia in J70, so it's been a bit tricky getting used to the boats, but we're getting the hang of it now.
So how have you managed to get the hang of it so quickly? You must have some kind of similar boat that you're sailing back at home.
Yeah, so we train in Elliott Sevens mainly. Our kite and jib trimmer, he's a laser sailor, so he's used to just trimming the main, so his learning curve is massive.
But you guys are doing phenomenally well. You look like you have a chance of getting into the 4-boat final. How much have you thought about how the tactics might change for the 4-boat final?
We haven't really started thinking about the final too much. We're just going race by race at the moment, but definitely playing it safe, but also taking some risks.
Now, you're also running a barefoot program on your boat. Have you noticed it's quite cold at 1,800 metres up in the mountains?
Yeah, the toes do get a little bit numb at some points, but it's okay.
What's the good side of going barefoot?
Got better grip and feel of the boat, and you can kind of slide out over the rail a bit easier.
Okay, well, we can't argue with it. Seems to be working quite well. And Toby Schadewald on Norddeutsche Regattaverein, he's steering his boat barefoot. So there's something to this. You're flying back when? On Monday, the day after the regatta?
Yeah, on Monday morning we start the journey back to Sydney. I think it's like 35 hours or something.
So your travel time will almost be as long as the time you've spent here in St Moritz?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's big commitment. What would you say when you go back home and you tell people about this regatta? It's the first time we've seen anyone from down under competing at the Sailing Champions League. Going to bring a few friends back with you next time?
Oh yeah, for sure. We're going to get heaps of people doing the National Sailing League in Australia and get as much attention to the regatta as possible.
Fantastic. Well, Charlie, we've been so impressed with how Sydney have gone here so far. We'd love to see you in that 4-boat final. Best of luck with the rest of the regatta.
Thank you very much.
So Charlie Alexander, part of the squad that flew over specially to do this. Such a long trip for such a short regatta. We're just seeing some tape being applied to one of the boats that picked up some damage at the windward mark of the previous race. So someone might be losing their damage deposit. The teams pay a €1,000 damage deposit as part of the entry process, and if you are deemed to have caused the damage during a collision, then it's down on you. So Corky, any ideas as to who that might have been?
Well, looking at going back through the SAP sailing analytics, of course, this is just determining what I'm seeing through the tracker, but it looked like Pirogova, as they came in on that port on that top windward mark where they did pick up the penalty and the umpires called it, did look like they didn't get the complete bear away. And looking at where that tape's just been applied, I've got a funny feeling that the bowsprit or a section of Pirogova's bow gave them a good bit of a kiss on the way past before then going in and attacking behind. So I've got a funny feeling that was the incident right there.
Okay, we just had our jury cam there, or umpire cam. That's Neven Baran we were just seeing there with his peaked cap, and we're on board with Neven Baran driving the boats with one of the other umpires. So
it's cool perspective to see, this is what they're seeing, this is what they're watching out for. Of course, that their heads are moving left, right, centre, and how it works with the umpires is, like we were if we were in the studio, we take the two boats that are in the situation or coming close to the mark and say, right, you're on port, I'm on starboard, okay, so it's on you, okay, now this is coming closer, now we're into the boat length circle, and you talk it through as if it's kind of all about to happen, but as long as there, it allows you to make that snap decision on that. So really, really interesting stuff.
Just having a chat with the race officer, just talking things through before we get into the final flight, which is flight 18 of qualifying. That will be race 52, can you believe it? We've seen an awful lot of competition over the last few days.
Yes, we have, and it's going to be an interesting race for people to learn and watch and engage with on the St. Champions League. But unfortunately, all of the teams that are entering this race here are not in a chance to be able to get into that final four. So it's all going to be for pride. It's all going to be, can they make their way up the table? Can they scrape any points back if they're able to get in, rather than a 10th place? Bump up into that magic 10 and go back feeling proud, but knowing that they'll have to come back next year for an attack on that, see if they could be crowned 2020 Sailing Champions League.
It's funny how, all the round robin and who races who in these flights will have been worked out many days ago, but it's strange how this first race, the highest ranked team that we have is 10, which is Württembergische Yacht Club, winner of the race that we saw just now. But isn't it funny how we haven't got any of the major players in this one? It's just the luck of the draw how it's worked out that way.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting that it's panned out, but all it means is more excitement as we come forward and see how everyone gets on as we close in on that mark. So very interesting.
The next two are going to be absolute humdingers, aren't they?
Yeah.
So I did an interview earlier with one of the key people that puts this whole regatta together here in St. Moritz, and that's Wim Russell. Wim Russell is the shore manager of the Sailing Champions League final here in St. Moritz, but he's many, many other things, quite apart from the fact that he also speaks 7 languages, all of which I know that you've used during the live commentary for the people in the stadium these last few days, Wim.
Yes, well, it's actually very nice to have all these people. I mean, we're a very international spot here, so a lot of people, a lot of nationalities come by here, and it's nice to be able to tell them something in their own language.
You have probably been working for months on this. Just tell us about the logistics of building up to an event like this. I know there's a lot been going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, definitely there's a lot going on behind the scenes, but I mean, it's the third event we're having here now for the Sailing Champions League, and we have a very good team. Everyone knows exactly what to do and when to do what, so we're actually very confident to get everything in the perfect way, to like Swiss organization, let's call it like this.
It's taken 3 years for the sunshine to show up, but it really has showed up this year. We've had fantastic conditions. You promised us it was going to be great weather for every day of the regatta, and it's proven to be correct. You must be really happy about that.
I know you didn't believe me the first day I told you, but no, exactly. This is our normal conditions we have here in the Engadin Valley. If we get nice, clear, sunny weather, then this breeze kicks in and we get to 20 knots, and this is what happened the last 3 days and what's going to be for today. Even a little stronger, I suggest, because it came quite early this morning. So, perfect day today, I think, for the finals.
And just tell us, what's the scenario for today? How much of the qualifying have we got left to do, and then what happens after that?
Well, we got 3 more flights to sail. That means 9 races. We have to think about a little more than 1 hour per flight. So I think we will be finished with all our qualification flights, 18 flights around 1:30, maybe 2 o'clock. And then we go into the finals. We step into the finals. And then the first team there who has 2 wins, the winner of the qualifier takes 1 point already, 1 win. Wins the whole event, so very excited to I'm looking forward to that.
Wim, you've put in an awful lot of work along with the rest of your team. It's been a fantastic regatta. Thanks very much, and we look forward to a great final day with you here in St. Moritz.
Thank you, me as well.
So we're hearing that maybe there won't be a final Flight 18 because of the timing, and we've just been informed that if it wasn't going to start before 12:30, then it wasn't going to start. That's come as a bit of a surprise to us. So, yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, I say, sort of flicking through the same instructions. Well, it's clearly got to be in there, black and white, for the race organisers and officials to say, well, you know, this is the rule, this is what we've put in. Everyone, you sign up and agree to it. But I must admit, it didn't jump out to me of any bit. So that's a bit of a shame if that's the case, and Flight 18 wouldn't go ahead, because we were set up for some pretty epic sort of racing, to be honest, and that could have really brought a bit. But looking at one of the boats going back, boat number 5, the yellow boat, looked like it was nearly back on the dock, and there's the AP flag, AP till later date. So that looks like we are into final time. So, you know, if we can have a look at the leaderboard and bring up the leaderboard, again, we wait for complete confirmation on all of what we're hearing, and just we're being fed this information right now. But if we can look at that leaderboard, then we'll be able to identify those top 4 boats, and so, you know, there'll be a bit of a sigh of relief from some of those teams, but also maybe a bit of disappointment or annoyance from the teams that were on the edge of it. So there we see Flight 18. You know, hasn't sort of taken.
Yeah, the Flight 18 that isn't going to be, by the sound of it. So the 4 that are looking like they're going to go through, and they do go through with a 4-point gap, are the Danish Kalavik Badelag, who've got a 4-point edge on Norddeutsche Regatta Verein from Germany, then Kongoli Dance Yacht Club, also from Denmark, and then the Australians, Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron, come through for that 4th and last spot in the finals. But let's spare a thought for the likes of KSSS from Sweden. I spoke to Bjorn Hansen earlier, as you saw, and he'll be disappointed not to have a shot at Flight 18. And okay, it was probably an outside possibility with a 4-point gap, but no opportunity for Sweden or Kreuzlingen from Switzerland to have a pop at it.
Defending champions as well, Circolo della Volabari. So all the top 7 mathematically had a chance of stepping into that top 4. Like, it would have been a real kind of, I keep fingers crossed and everything's got to go my way for this to happen. But that's racing, you know. It's that opportunity was there. But you know, let's not take anything away from that top 4. What a phenomenal amount of racing. You know, we've done, as we said, 51 races have been completed in 17 flights. And so let's have a little look at kind of the, you know, the points now are irrelevant. That's the exciting thing is, okay, Kalavik Badelag, they go in first place. So this final format now, they carry in 1 race win, and it's the first to 2. So NRV, KDY and RSYS have the opportunity to go out and race. So the longest this format could go on for is 4 races. which would mean one of those top 4 teams would go away with 2 race wins. If Keflavik Badelag go out and win that first race, then it's done dusted. So that's where you want to finish first in this qualifying and going through these flights, because if you manage to do that, you already take that bonus of that first place going forward. So they're in the controlling position, but to make it into that final 4, any of those 4 could go away still with this championship.
Now, I did an interview earlier with one of the Danish teams, and that was the Royal Danish Yacht Club. So let's hear their thoughts about if they managed to get into the final 4, which we now know they have managed to do. Jeppe Black is running bow on KDY, the Royal Danish Yacht Club. And Jeppe, you've been sailing a hell of a regatta so far.
We've been doing very well. We just try to keep it steady, not force anything, not try to push it. So we try to stay away from the way back and not force too much. So we've been lucky. We've had good fun.
And the other Danish team here also been doing very well. What does that tell us about the strength of the Danish league?
Well, the Danish league is very competitive, actually. There's a lot of teams competing. We've been doing it for about 4 or 5 years now, and so it seems that everyone is picking up. We've got a first division and a second division, so it's spreading out, which brings even more talented sailors into the game, which even ups the game even more.
Now, I imagine that KDY is one of the biggest yacht clubs. How many members do you have?
We don't have that many members, actually. KDY is a club with about 2,000 members spread all over the country. So the smaller yacht clubs, or the clubs that has a harbour, we don't have a harbour. We don't have our own harbour in KDY. So there are a lot of other teams or clubs that have more members than we do.
There's also Frederikshavn Sailing Club that's here with 75 members. So, I mean, you're not the smallest.
We're definitely not the smallest, and Frederikshavn have been doing very well also at home. I'm not sure what they're doing this regatta. They drop out, and I don't know why.
But not you guys. You're having a fantastic regatta. You've won quite a few races, but we see that no one is completely invincible. You can win one race and you can finish last in the next. How do you feel about your chances of getting through to the final 4, and how much do you think the tactics change once you get into a 4-boat final?
The 4-boat final will be different because it'll be more match racing, and we hope our advantage on the match racing circuit. We've been sailing match racing since the 90s, so boat to boat I think we can handle it. We hope we can do that with 4 and 4.
Now, the funny thing is, whoever wins qualifying goes through effectively having won race 1. The other 3 boats cannot afford to let that boat win the first race of the final. So you've almost got a target on your back if you find yourself in that position.
Yeah.
Is it maybe better to go through in second place?
No. If you have that one win, you want it. Yeah, we want it. If we can have it, we'll take it for sure.
Absolutely. I was asking you a stupid question and I threw it to you. You weren't going to take it. Clearly you want to win qualifying. You're in a great position to do so, but as we speak, there's a few more flights to go. We wish you the best of luck in the final few flights.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Well, as it turns out, Jeppe Black and Kongelige Dansk Yacht Club didn't win the qualifiers. That goes to the other Danish team, Keflavik Badelag, who are winners of effectively race 1 of what will be the 4-boat final coming up very shortly. So that means that the other 3 teams, Norddeutsche Regattaverein, Kongelige Dansk Yacht Club and Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron, cannot afford for Keflavik Badelag to win race 1 of the finals, because that would be the whole championship done and dusted right there. Corky, what's the maximum number of races that we can have in the final?
So the maximum is 4. So for instance, if all the 3 other boats that have made it into that top 4 that aren't carrying that 1 race win in take a race win, then that 4th and final race, whoever wins that race would be crowned champion. So this is a great format, really exciting, really easy to follow. As long as Keflavik Badelag, they have the advantage, and that's the advantage they carry through from such a successful qualifying sort of stage, or through 17 flights, they will carry that 1 extra point in. All the other 3 teams, so Norddeutsche Regattaverein, Kongelige Dansk Yacht Club and Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron, all 3 of them will go in with no extra points, and so if they then score a race win, they've still got to score 2. So really exciting format, really easy to follow. Whoever crosses that finish line first takes a point. If it is Kalevik Badelag, then they already hold that point, and that's 2 straight in the bag. If it's one of the other 3 teams, then they keep on racing until someone gets 2.
Well, there's a 50-50 chance of a Danish team winning this. They've got representation in 2 of the 4 clubs that go through to the 4-boat final. I spoke to the helmsman of Kalevik Badelag, now sitting in the box seat going into that final. Let's hear what he had to say before he knew that he was going to be going through in first place. Lars Wilhelmsen is the skipper of Kalevik Badelag, and you're one of the 2 Danish teams that's really doing incredibly well here. What do you put the Danish performance down to here so far?
Yeah, well, I think the Danes, they love the strong winds that we've had here, and usually in the Danish league we experience conditions like this. And we're also pretty lucky that we have KDY to battle against in the Danish league, and that's put us up here because we love the competition from KDY.
Well, you're both doing extremely well, and we have had really nice, strong wins here. What do you think is your particular strength? Which part of the race course do you enjoy, and how, for example, do you tend to approach the start?
Yeah, well, the starts, that's one of the parts that we really like, and we approach the start always coming from the leeward side and coming up and tacking in the last minute, and that's our way of doing a start, and that's keeping opportunities open for us, so we can choose whether to go near the boat or near the pin end in the very last minute. So far it's worked out okay. Of course, it's so good competition here that you will always have a couple of races where you are in trouble, but as long as you keep the equality in above 3 or something like that, you will end up pretty good.
Well, we've seen most of the races being won by a boat that's got a good committee boat end start, but we saw you spot a really good pin end opportunity, and you started off the pin end. There was no one else around you, and you were able to tack and cross the other boats after about maybe 30 or 40 seconds, and you won the race from there. So you do seem to like the pin end, and you seem to make it work where other people can't do that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, in the Danish league, I think we have the records for coming from the pin end on port side and crossing in front of the fleet. So we're always looking for a pin end start. We know that the committee guys, they always put a little bit of advantage there just to keep the line really equal. But then if the wind goes to the pin end side, then you gotta go there.
And I know that there's still a way to go, and there's only 4 boats that make it to that final. If you do make it to the 4-boat final, how much would you change your tactics, if at all?
I mean, if you're in the final with the 4 boats, then you got to do a little more boat-to-boat tactics and not so much on the course. But we really don't want to change it because we always compete to get first to the top mark and take it from there. So yeah, that's our way to go, but we gotta fight for this final 4, so yeah, it's gonna be really interesting if we'll make it.
Well, you're looking like you're well placed to do so. We wish you the best of luck for the rest of the qualifying.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, so far things have worked out exactly as Lars Wilhelmsen would have wanted them to. He says he prefers the strong winds. That's what he's got. He would have preferred to go through in first place in the qualifiers. Well, he's managed to do that too. And let's just pick up on the other point that he mentioned, because I noticed, or we've noticed, Corky, that they do like to start off the pin end, start with speed off the pin end. And we've tended to notice that Norddeutsche Regatta Verein, sitting in second overall, tend to be the committee boat end starters. So now the question is, how much things change when you've only got 4 boats on the start line? And Lars said that it becomes a little bit more boat on boat, a little bit more tactical, sort of almost halfway to match racing.
Yeah, it's in that sort of format, is that normally in a fleet race you get yourself blinkered too much on 1 or 2 boats and the other 5 boats are out there racing and escape past. It's not the case, is that you can easily get locked in on 1 boat, but with the format you've got to win a race. You know, it's simple as not letting the other boat go. So you kind of mentioned it a little bit in the interview just prior to that, is you know, with Kalevik Badelag, is, you know, you were chatting with the other team, the other Danish team, saying about having a target on your back, and you know that is the other 3 teams are like, okay, we've got to win this race. There's no way we can let them win because that's it, over. Our opportunity's gone. So no, those 3 boats aren't going all out to then take them out, because it doesn't work like that. But you've still got to get a race win, and so it's one of these pressurized situations we always see sort of in the Olympic classes where you're looking in front for the attack, but you've got to be very carefully looking over your back shoulder as well on who's who you're defending as well. It's no point going, well, I'll be in second place and fantastic, because second place isn't going to cut it. It's first or nothing. So it forces the sailors to potentially. It might play into the arms of some people of doing a higher risk strategy, or they might actually try. The nice way about this format is there's no softly. You've got to just go at it and go, right, we're all in. There's all the aggression's going to come out. If there's an opportunity to shut someone down, you do it. But if there's a knock on that the other two boats or another boat can skip past, you've got to balance that. So it's going to be a very, very exciting final format. We've got the breeze, we've got the sunshine. We're just looking forward to those 4 teams making their way out on the water shortly.
Well, it's about 20 minutes away from that action beginning, so we are going to take a short break, and we're going to come back to you at 1:15, which will be just in time to see the start of race 1 of these 4-boat finals, and Corky and I can't wait. Join us then.
It's just amazing to be here. Kraftwerk, my favorite tool.
It's great that they don't set up this lounge to bring all the sailors together.
The squad is on a mission now to win more Breitling watches.
We are from Australia, really enjoying sailing in St. Moritz in Graubünden. It's an amazing place to check out.
If you're ever in St. Moritz, make sure to visit Batteris Palace. It's absolutely amazing.
It's great to have SAP Sailing Analytics to improve our sailing and to run better.
It's great to have such a reliable supplier like Marinepool, Spirit of the Ocean.
This is it, the 4-boat final. We have cut down 24 clubs from 10 different nations down to the final 4 representing 3 nations, Denmark, Germany and Australia. My name is Andy Rice, and sitting next to me in the studio is Mark Corky Rhodes, and we are going to be bringing you all the action of this 4-boat final. Corky, we could be looking at 1 race, we could be looking at 4 or something in between. It depends really how KBL, Kallavik Badelag, who are leading after the qualifying, do in this regatta. If they win the very next race, then it's all done and dusted in 1 race. But the others, Norddeutsche Regatta Verein, Kongoli Dance Yacht Club and Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron, will be doing their best to make sure that they beat those Danes who won the qualifying rounds.
Yeah, so just to really reinforce that is, so after all the qualifying, the lead boat as they go through to the final has 1 win already, and it's the first to 2 wins. So the 3 other boats that go through to make up that magic 4 all have to win a race to be level pegging with that lead boat to then go forward. So, as Andy just said, if Kallavik Badelag go out, win this first race with the 1 race win they carry through from winning the qualifiers all the way through, they take the win. But if the other teams all pick up a race win along the way, we could see up to a 4th race. That would be the final decider, and that's the easy way to follow this format. First one across that line will take the win. So very, very exciting. Same race course as we've seen. Windward leeward configuration, upwind start, the gate mark at the bottom. So something, if you've been following before, you can tune straight in on. But of course it's going to look a little bit odd because there's only 4 boats and there's not 8. But these are the 4 that after 51 races of competing, one, it's amazing that the boats are still all in one piece and all doing the same way. But the teams have chosen the boats they want to be in. And these are the boats out there. So the boats that they've chosen are boat 4, 5, 6 and 7. So now the teams, this is where the pressure mounts. This is where they wanted to be at. But if Kallavik Badelag can go forward with that race win and show their dominance throughout their qualifying and take another race win, could be done dusted in 1 race.
These are the guys in 2nd place at the moment, Norddeutsche Regatta Verein, so they carry through 2 points from the qualifying rounds. Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron, they got through in 4th place, so they carry through 4 points. And we've got 2 teams that are rocking the barefoot approach to this whole sailing, aren't they? We got barefoot teams on Australia, and we got barefooted Toby Shadowalt on the German boat.
Yeah, we were chatting about this quite a lot. Just, you know, a lot of teams, some go about wearing that just to feel like they've got a greater grip, a sense, a feeling of the boat. Some just do it because they don't want to wear boots and they want it to be a bit more comfortable. You know, we've talked about the downsides of once you get a toe either side of a ratchet block or something, it kind of puts you off. And also the temperature of the water. It is absolutely beautiful outside, but the temperature of the water, funnily enough, is pretty chilly. So, yeah, you know, some brave men and women out on that water.
Well, I was really impressed with the speed of Charlotte Alexander's tack earlier that we saw in one of the final qualifying races this morning. Incredible speed from one side of the boat to the other, and no fear whatsoever, even though she wasn't wearing any footwear. NRV just going through the start line, just checking up on the start, and boat number 4, that's Kongoli Dance Yacht Club, that's the other Danish team who went through qualifying in 3rd place. So it's going to be a green windward mark. You see the yellow and the red flags are tucked away. There's a really clever system up the top end where there's a choice of windward marks depending on how the wind has shifted. Right now, those teams know that it's the green windward mark that they need to aim for on this 2-lap windward lure course with 3 minutes to go.
So this is brilliant. You know, they've been out there this afternoon and this morning racing, doing those final flights. They're into those last final minutes. This is the prep. This is the decisions. You can see all the teams talking about it. But the question is, what's that strategy going to be, and how's it going to be affected by only 4 boats on the water?
Yes, it's going to be quite an open start line compared with the 8-boat starts they had earlier. And we've got 2 minutes 30 to go.
The The next race is presented by Didon.
So we've got Kalevik Badelau, who with my interview earlier with Lars Wilhelmsen, the skipper, he tends to favour the pin end of the start in the 8-boat starts. We've got Norddeutsche Regatta Verein, who tend to favour the committee boat ends of the start. Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron, I seem to remember they quite like the pin end as well, and I can't really remember. Do you recall, Corky, any particular trend for the Royal Danish Yacht Club?
They've generally been scattered across the line. They've been willing to move in and out of sections of that line and adapt to it. There's not been a hard and fast sort of default mode for them, and I think that's how you've got to be. You've got to be pretty flexible. You've got to be fluid to where you want to be. You've got your strategy, and the one thing we've seen is this right hand side does have a nice lift on and a shift up that right hand side, but that breeze tends to just filter out towards that top section of the mark, so suddenly the left comes slightly stronger even though it's on a headed tack. That breeze and that bit of extra pressure allows boats to nip in round that windward mark on the port ley line. But a bit more breathing space with only 4 boats, but there's no way that you can just be happy with second place. It's got to be attack all the time for that first place. But you get too blinkered on one boat and 2 other boats could leapfrog you.
Just less than a minute to go to the start of race 1 of the finals of the Sailing Champions League 2019. It's all going to come down to the next maybe just 20 minutes or so, maybe the next hour, depending on how many of these races we get to see take place. Some aggressive luffing taking place there between the Danish boat Kalevik Badelau and on the Australians Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron, and most of these boats seem to be favouring the committee boat end. It's only Kalevik Badelau who seem happy to settle for closer towards the pin end. So who will come out of those 3 at the top end with 18 seconds to go? There should be enough room for everybody, but Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron are holding things up a little bit at the other end. 10 seconds to go, and it looks very, very close on the line already. It looks dangerously close on the line for the boats at the top end. Good launch and good speed at the bottom of the course for boat number 7. That's Kalevik Badelau.
Really interesting looking at that start then for Kalevik Badelau. They were right down at that pin end, but were late on the acceleration as they came back. I'm surprised in that early pre-start they didn't take that double tack and come up and close a bit of distance to the boats up above them. And having that gap and space is just wasted space. You could have sat right underneath the bow. For Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron, a nice move straight off the middle. They've got good breeze there, and as I say, got that breathing space from the Danes below them, so they can put the bow down and accelerate if they need to. 2 boats heading over towards that right-hand side. They will pick up on that right-hand shift. The question is how soft that breeze goes on that as far as you go in.
And now that boat number 4 on the far side, Congolese Dance Yacht Club, has tacked, it looks like it's on a pretty good heading. The moment of truth coming for the Australians in yellow as they tack onto port. Will they be able to cross and clear boat number 4 coming across on starboard? Not looking so great for Kalevik Badelau. That's the boat that the others cannot afford to win this race, because if the pink boat wins this race, it's game over right there and then. And we see the collision course between the Australians in yellow and the Danes in light green, but the Danes have now tacked, so it's looking good for the Australians, but it's also looking quite nice for Norddeutsche Regatta Verein on the far side of the course.
Yeah, so the gap here again between sort of Danish boat and boat number 7 and the Australians in boat number 5, the yellow boat. That gap only exists really from what happened off the start line, and so it just surprises me that Lars allowed that sort of distance to creep in with 30 seconds to go with the other boats all racked up towards the committee boat. I certainly would have taken that double tack and just pinned in underneath, but this is the position they're in. Now this is going to be the first cross. Our Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron going to carry that little bit of momentum in on this line and be able to squeeze in front of Norddeutsche Regatta Verein. Looks like there might be, but they are closing fast. There's one big peel out from the Royal Danish Yacht Club.
The Australians look like they're going to be safely round in first place. Norddeutsche Regatta Verein closing in fast in second place, and followed round by the first of the Danish teams. It's the Royal Danish Yacht Club, and then at the back, winner of qualifying but currently last in the 4-boat final, it's Kalevik Badelau with with it all to do. So the Australians very, very good first windward leg, but already on the attack is the red boat of Norddeutsche Regattaverein, sailing a lower line than the yellow boat of the Australians, looking to get down the inside of Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron and make life difficult. We're with umpire cam right now with Nevin Baran, our chief umpire. The Germans have now jibed out, first to jibe on to port, looking for better breeze on that side of the course, and will they find it? Quite often the boats that are early to jibe out towards the stadium side of the course are rewarded with more breeze on that side.
Well, interesting looking and at exactly that. So that breeze does look softer on that inside though, so this mid-track is all looking quite good for these lead boats. And again, looking at, if we were looking at a long jibe, these ones are definitely taking a greater distance, but the speed now coming on the far side for Norddeutsche Regattaverein. Now that's a great jibe, and look at the speed they're carrying on through. So the speed of the umpire boat alongside them. Look at that. That is a perfect opportunity. Tobias Shadowald suddenly looks like they've hit the turbo button on that inside. The boat looks like it's got an engine on compared with everybody else and have launched down that inside. Look at the speed differences between that. Now starting to drop back into that breeze. But they were nearly double the speed of all other boats on that one little peel out.
What a fantastic spot by the Germans to see that gust on the stadium side and giving the people in the stadium such a moment of entertainment as the Germans leap out into what surely must be the lead by the time they converge back at these leeward gates, which they're approaching now. The Aussies still looking very soft at the bottom of the picture with the yellow Jenica. Everyone pretty much travelling the same speed, but that hyperspace button has worked beautifully for the Germans who we're on board with now.
So he'd been hiding that in the tank, hadn't he, all week, sort of waiting. They've slowly been chipping away. And see that yellow Jenica looks nice, but again, even though they had that extra speed difference, the one thing that the Australians did was sail that long jibe first. They carried a lot of more distance down towards that gate mark without having to sail that extra angle. But a great move from Tobias Shadowald to put that little bit of pressure on. It created a separation here.
And so round go, there's been a change of mark, so they're going now to the yellow windward mark, and the yellow boat of the Australians is first round going out towards the left. Quite a slow rounding for Norddeutsche Regattaverein on the far side, first to go out to the right hand side. Looks like the next two boats are going to follow the leader out to the left hand side, so it's the Germans again who find themselves ploughing a lonely course out on that side of the track. But it doesn't look good for Australia at the moment. It looks like the others are coming up the inside of them a little bit, but they're back on track now. And how long will Sydney keep on going this side of the course?
I was just about to pick up on exactly that. I would have been tempted to take that little tack out early, bank it. You know, they're so easy that you can sit there feeling like you're just gambling a bit more. This feels great. Actually, it doesn't matter whether you win by a metre or a mile. The main thing is if you're able to bank it in and come in. That breeze looking on that background, look like there's that bit more breeze that Toby Shadowald's gone back out into, and that's where they launched. Yes, they're leading the other two boats out, but yeah, I think for Dave Chapman, they're sort of on the on Sydney boat here. I would have potentially taken that little tack up and just come back up and just try to squeeze a bit of distance back, because that's a massive distance. Completely at the further ends of the race course from Norddeutsche Regattaverein.
Now we're going to see the convergence between the Germans on the far side and these Australians on this side.
Doing everything possible. There's that kite sheet. The last thing you want is that kite sheet dragging. All that is extra drag on that boat, slowing it down.
Well, that's good news for the Australians. It looks like the Germans didn't like the shift that they were on, so they've been forced to tack on to port tack. So maybe things looking a lot better for the Australians than they were a minute or so ago. And suddenly the Germans look very exposed on the far side. Things could well come back. You can never say never on Lake St. Moritz, but at the moment it looks like the Australians are sailing into a more and more comfortable lead, whilst Germany has to worry about whether they're going to hold on to second place.
Well, that's to back that up with the SAP Sailing Analytics. We've got a 50 degrees wind shift clocking round towards that left-hand side, which is why they are absolutely launched up here. As they get towards that right corner, the likelihood is they are going to start getting a knock on the way back. And Dave Chapman and his guys on board Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron will be looking for that knock, because yes, they've made a really big game, but potentially they could be high on this line as they come in towards this new windward mark. But a great move from the Australian team here. Norddeutsche Regattaverein now starting to look into that slightly softer section. Look at the knock on look at the angles of the bow from where they're pointing at as well. There's a big knock on the Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron boat there. And that breeze suddenly going slightly softer, so...
Suddenly it's looking better for the Germans on the far side. This is how wacky it can get on this lake. And Germany looking like they're back into second place. And could they have a piece of the Australians? I think the Aussies have got enough to be able to get across the front. But how quickly things can turn on this lake, which is what makes it such a great place for competitions like this. So the Australians have managed to get across the front of the Germans, but the Germans, on the other hand, have managed to get back up into second place ahead of the two Danish teams. So Danish sitting in third and fourth right now, with Australia still holding top spot as they sail up towards the yellow windward mark this time round.
And so, as just to say, we were talking about at the pre-start, is if Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron or Norddeutsche Regattaverein win this race, then it means we roll straight into another race, because Kallavik Badelag were the only team that, if they won this race, would put the pin into it and say this is all playing out. Yellow mark, yellow boat as they lead round the top. David Chapman, Finn Alexander, Charlotte Alexander and Zach Quinlan go round for Australia. Right behind them, previous winners of the Sailing Champions League, Tobias Schadewald.
Very close with the boom on that mark. I'm sure the umpires were watching that, but they're playing it by every inch round this race course. Then around go Kallavik Badelag in third place, winners of qualifying, and then at the back Royal Danish Yacht Club, again also former winners of the Sailing Champions League, but with a lot to do if they're going to win the Sailing Champions League this year.
And so looking at where that finish line is, again, this is the long jibe. So now you start to see Australia take that jibe to try and just defend their inside line here. So you might see them go back into a second jibe shortly. I don't think you'll necessarily see the full approach over to that far side. They've got a little bit of breeze there, but just keeping themselves there so you can see them looking back. This could be the win that they need, that then puts them on level pegging with that lead Danish boat and opens up this fantastic final. It's just, don't know where to look, and there's the inside boats. They've got a bit of breeze now. If you look at the Royal Danish Yacht Club, they're starting to accelerate as well. So are we going to see suddenly that turbo button get hit on the inside and bring them right down to this finish line? This is it.
Well, it looks like that turbo button is indeed being hit by the Danish teams on the far side. The Germans did it to everybody else the last time round, but the Germans are getting some of their own medicine back. No one's going to get the Australians. They're looking pretty safe for the win, but we could see some significant changes between the Danish and German teams. Germany now just jibe, but we're watching Australia come across the finish line, so that's their first race win. They are now level with Kallavik Badelag. And what's going to happen behind them? Germany look like they're being caught out by the Danes. Germany desperately trying to run down deep, and it's going to be a photo finish between Kallavik Badelag and the Germans. And Norddeutsche Regattaverein, I think they just squeak it, so the Germans just hold on to second ahead of Kallavik Badelag, with Royal Danish Yacht Club bringing up the rear of race one of this four-boat final Sailing Champions League.
And we should explain as well that, yes, a race win is going to put you in that chance of taking the crown at the end of it. But the final three places are then decided on points from their initial point set. So every single point matters. If you're not going to finish first, or you've not got that bit, you've definitely got to be in second. You've got to try and get that. So a great win for Dave Chapman and his team there. They know they've got to do it all again, though. That's it. Now they've got a point. Okay, they're level pegging with Kallavik Badelag. The other two teams still would require a race win. But now the pressure's on. So now we've got two boats that, if they were to take, either of those two boats were to take that win again, that would crown some champs. So lots of pressure on, lots more excitement as we're going to roll straight into the next sort of race of this final series. And this, I think, the format's just brilliant, isn't it? Now sort of it just clear as day on how to follow, who's going to finish, who crosses that line, and actually you're going to be celebrating with that person. So now we've got 2 people that, if they take that race win, could take the champ straight then and there. If the 2 other boats, the Deutsche Regattaverein and the Kongolige Dansk Yacht Club, get a race win, then it just continues all the way through, and we could be looking at this 4-race format.
So I wonder what they're talking about the race start. The Australians can be very pleased with their race start. The Danes, as you pointed out just after the start, Corky, Kallavik Badelaug, they started at the pin end in clear air, but they really gave away distance up the line, and they made it very easy for the Australians to get off the line. And then the other 2 boats were fairly early onto port tack, not having got the best starts off the committee boat end. So it was quite surprising to me how much they wanted the committee boat end. It was quite busy up there. The Australians didn't fight too hard for that. They came off a little bit more conservatively off the middle of the line, but with really good timing going on the B of bang of the start gun.
I was just surprised how sort of, for Lars and his team, that they sat back quite softly, like there wasn't really any need to kind of, we won't attack this too hard. Yeah, we've got a gap to windward. This is where it matters. That's it, right? That roll into a double tack at 30 seconds to go, get closer, right underneath the bows of the Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron, then with the other 2 boats even higher to them. But you got nothing to lose then. You can bear off if you were close to the line and still attack it. But they were a little bit late into the line by going for that pin. And also, you're in one of the safest places because you're covered by the other boats from who's looking down the line from the committee boat. So, yeah, a bit strange. Hopefully, Lars gets a bit more fire in his belly after that and, realises, well, we've got to step this up. We are in real threat now. There's one other boat that's got to do exactly what we've got to do to take the championship. So it'll be interesting, but again, a little bit of it showed the quirkiness of the race course. 50 degrees wind shift coming in off that gate. It sort of, it looked like Norddeutsche Regattaverein were really tucked in on that right-hand side. We knew it went slightly softer, but then just to watch the angles of where they tacked, the Australians tacked, and it didn't look like they'd even tacked. They literally went from the same angle, nearly to the same angle, but through the wind. It was really quite amazing. So it does show. Yep, okay. Your start's not everything, but it certainly puts you in the best place to be able to. I'd rather be at the front looking back and trying to defend it than I would be trying to attack all the time.
What surprised me was the Germans, they jibed away, they hit the hyperspace button on the stadium side of the course. I thought they were going to be launched into the lead, and then in the end, it didn't actually really give them that much further distance down the track. They must have sailed a lot more distance to do what they did, because the difference in boat speed was remarkable, and yet the overall result was not that remarkable.
No, well, if we kind of look back at that, it was really interesting on the side that they had to sail a higher angle. They got that gust, then they accelerated, but otherwise they were up and running. But they did have to sail a longer distance, and as soon as you have to do that, you have to outweigh the speed to the distance.
Well, we're about 2 minutes 20 away from the next start.
The next race is presented by Kraftwerk.
Just under 2 minutes to the start, and I think I saw the committee boat being moved a little bit, so I'm not sure how this start line shapes up compared with previous time round. So I'm not going to ask you to call which end of the line yet, Corky, but it's going to be interesting to see who likes which end of the line this time round. We've seen how crucial this part of the race is, and it's the yellow windward mark we can see from that flag that the teams are going to be aiming for.
Well, currently with the wind conditions we've got and the course geometry, we're looking at a slight committee boat bias. Nothing too significant, but of course this wind is moving so much that actually, it kind of sort of makes the bias end a little bit sort of irrelevant. As long as you're packed in tight to someone, you're clear off that line and you've got a clear lane. The most important thing is hitting that first shift, having the opportunity to take that first shift, whether it's coming in as a header, whether it's a lift and riding it out. But being on this line, being only 4 boats, as long as you're packed tightly to each other, the actual advantage to being 2 boat lengths up on the right-hand side is pretty minimal. So at the moment, slight bias towards that Committee Boat TN. We've got that yellow flag up, so that's going to be going to that yellow mark, which is where the breeze changed halfway through that race. But as the boats rack up about 30 seconds back, they're all still pretty spread out.
Looks like this time Norddeutsche Regatta Verein on the right-hand side are going for the pin end start. That's unusual for them. Meanwhile, at the far end on the left, we've got Karlavik Badelaug.
Well, really interesting. They're already flat out hiked with their sails pinned in to get up to this line. They're a long way back from this line. All of the teams, like they've misjudged this. So Norddeutsche Regatta Verein really having to squeeze for this, but they're going to be tight, and even the Aussies are going to punch this early. Very, very close, right on the line there. But all teams were caught out then. None of them were up to the line. Big sort of shift.
Norddeutsche Regatta Verein very, very close to touching the pin then. I think they just got away with it. But it seems like people are already planning their winner speeches then. Where were they? Their heads weren't in the game.
No one was near that line. The breeze still clocking further around towards that left. It's now starting to come back a bit towards the right. But all of them at like 30 seconds to go were sheeted in like they were going upwind already. That was a long way call off the line. I was being surprised about that. You know, there's no currents to catch them out. Yes, there's the wind shifts, but you need to be near that line to be in it. But they've all in that same position, so no one's really made any big capitalism out of it.
Now, Karlavik Badelaug, they look to do a slam dunk tack on top of Norddeutsche Regatta Verein, but I don't think it's worked out terribly well for the Danish. It looks to me like the Germans had enough momentum to shoot out the other side, and if anything, it's the Danes that are in danger of falling into the bad air of the Germans on the far side of the track. Now, you can understand why the Danish would want to do that, but at the moment, well, looks maybe they're just about hanging in there, but I like where the Australians are, and there's a big danger for the other 3 teams that Australia are looking very good in this race right now. Now the moment of truth as one of the boats tacks over. It's Karlavik Badelaug coming across on starboard. They really need a piece of the Australians, and it looks like they might do.
Yeah, in comes this knock again. Similar strategy as before. That breeze as they come in on this left-hand side stays a little bit stronger. If they can escape this second boat going into attack, if they're able to clear this bow, they should be all right. So they've managed to squeeze through. Their biggest problem is Norddeutsche Regatta Verein on that far side. So they've carried this left shift in again, but that breeze has started to soften. Looking at it, we're down to sort of 9 knots. There's still a little bit more filtering in. So the actual average wind speed is dropping as well. So the opportunities of when those gusts come through become even more apparent. But so far, so good for the Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron, taking that race win in that last one. A very similar format and the strategy laid out here on leg 1 in this second of the finals.
And that was 2 critical crosses that the Australians have managed to achieve in the last 30 seconds. Crossing first Karlavik Badelaug and then Norddeutsche Regatta Verein, never by very much. So those feet and inches are absolutely critical, because it now means that Australia in the yellow is going to be first to get to the yellow mark, and they have won the previous race. If they manage to hold this all the way around the racetrack, then they will become the champions of the Sailing Champions League. Look at the windward mark, and Royal Danish Yacht Club shooting the breeze, holding up the Germans and holding up the whole fleet. The Aussies they are making hay whilst the others are making a mess of the windward mark rounding.
That couldn't have played any nicer for the Aussies right then. All 3 boats all trying to shoot it and pinned up and held in place there. And that's just given them that bit of breathing space. But look at those dark patches on the water. When we were up from that drone shot, you could see those gusts that were available to the boat. So we've already seen it from Norddeutsche Regatta Verein, that accessing into that breeze and the speed difference, but this is still the long jibe, so a lot of them will hang on to this jibe a bit earlier before they go into any sort of jibe and cut back onto that inside, unless they can see that extra pressure. And this is all just playing into the Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron's hands, because it's just becoming a bit of a drag race and people are following him down. But look at that breeze again, down by the committee boat. Those puffs are still rolling down.
And no one's taking it. You'd think maybe the Royal Danish Yacht Club are best placed at the back of the fleet to jibe off and have a go at hitting the hyperspace button down near the stadium. But the Danes are making life very, very easy for the Australians, because everyone is following the Australians down there.
Yeah, Zach Quinlan up on the bow there, just peering back, constantly feeding information about where the gusts are, what these boats are doing. They're just looking out as much as possible for this breeze. But with everyone following this track here, it is nice and easy for them. Look at the speed differences though. Again, Norddeutsche Regattaverein just tapping into a little bit of breeze there and going in a little bit quicker. Then it filters back, then they go back to that average, but they're all ticking along at a similar sort of speed. So at the moment, now we're just peering in on that inside. The Royal Danish Yacht Club just squeezing down on that inside, now setting themselves up in a little better position. But here we go, bit of action. This is looking like the breeze coming on, speed coming up now. Look up over 9 knots for the German team as they go into this jibe.
So whenever one of their crew goes and sits behind Toby Shadowalt, you know that they're getting into planing mode. They get the jib out. Now the jib has actually come back in again, so maybe they're going to go back into soaking mode to sailing in deep mode. But for a moment it looked like the Germans were looking to get their boat on the plane again, but no, it's not really going to work out for them. And the Australians, you can see they've got a pick of either of those gate marks. Which are they going to choose? If I was them, I'd probably choose to go up the stadium side of the course, but oh, no, I mean, Corky, you don't agree with me. And based on what we saw in the previous race, maybe...
This near side mark, there's a closer bias to it. It's a little bit stepped up. But, again, where you're trying to access that breeze, I'll be coming to this near side mark. And clearly they think the same. So, hey, there we go. I would be accessing this breeze. I'll be accessing this breeze on this side and allow these other boats to follow. If they need to, though, if the boats decide to attack the other mark. But look at the bias on this. Now they're only just tucking round and that buoy's still not level with it. So there was a gain here. Whoever goes to that furthest buoy is going to sail a greater distance. Will these boats, if I'd be tempted to say, we saw that big shift come in for the Australians. They're in a great position just to hold here. Everyone else is going to follow them. And even if the Kalavik Badelag decide to go to the other buoy, they're sailing a greater distance. And so it's just, at the moment, the rich getting richer at the front here.
Yeah, it's looking very good for Australia right now. They've got very clear space between them and the other 3 boats, 45 metres, which in this kind of short course racing is a long, long way. The other two of the other 3 boats have already tacked on to port. How long will the Australians hold on starboard before they consider defending the far side of the course? I think they're probably holding out for a bit of a header, which it looks like they might have just got.
Looking at that angle there at the moment, yeah, now they've got to start going, and that's a great position still to cover back. They come down low out of that tack though. That's a low angle. They've dropped down a bit higher. Now they start to come back up onto the breeze, but they certainly didn't have the tacking angle out of that. Not a wonderful tack, and certainly sailing a couple of degrees lower than those inside boats that are just tacking into that right shift. So now this becomes the question for the Aussies. Do they have to keep an eye on Norddeutsche Regattaverein that are just planning to just track out behind them, or do they sail back into that centre of the course just to try and keep themselves in both options?
Well, Norddeutsche Regattaverein carrying on behind the Australians, which surely is going to make it very difficult for them to overtake the Australians from that position. And then out on the far side are the 2 Danish teams who haven't had much say in this race so far.
Well, so there's about 20, or just gone down, about 15 metres separating Norddeutsche Regattaverein from the Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron. So they're a bit closer. They've just both mirror attacked each other. So again, a nice commanding position for David Chapman and his team here, looking straight at them, looking nice, cool, calm and collected. It's big gaps there, but we've seen some big shifts rattle through. Breeze starting to build back up again. We're back into about 15 knots. And so one thing that the Aussies were talking about last night were how quick the Germans were in that breeze. When that breeze started to dial up, they just seemed to go through the gears and be that little bit stronger. So this breeze is coming up, but is it going to be enough to allow Tobias Shadowald to try and close that gap?
It's looking quite comfortable for the Australians. Bottom of picture in yellow. They are sailing out of their skins in this final so far. This high pressure form of racing really seems to be suiting the team from Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron. And unfortunately, Kalavik Badelag, they won the qualifiers, but that's that sort of steady as she goes type of approach to the racing with 8 boats. It doesn't apply here. It's a more aggressive form of racing that you've got to bring to your game. And unfortunately, boat number 7 hasn't been able to do that.
No, well, again, sort of David Chapman was saying that it's spent a lot of times, this is their first sort of time really sailing the J70, and certainly as a team, they spend time in Elliott 7s and Elliott 6s and stuff and do a lot of match racing, and so suddenly stripping out a few boats, going down to a 4-boat format becomes a bit more match race format. So again, it's something they feel maybe a bit more comfortable about. You've not got, hopefully, the risks of other boats infringing you on that race course, but so far, they took the race win in that first race that we just saw. This is their second race win. If they can hold on, this would cement them and crown them champions of the Sailing Champions League 2019, and they are the only boat outside all these big European countries rolling in with all these teams, and what a shake-up, and hopefully would really invigorate the league over there.
Well, it certainly would be a good news for league sailing for the Oceanic region to come away with such a big win from St. Moritz here in the centre of Europe. But let's not start making their winner speech for them yet. We're on Lake St. Moritz. Things can happen. We've seen 50-degree shifts already today. Looks like the Germans are thinking about attack fairly soon, but the Aussies, that will be their last tack of race 2 in the finals. Now they do just need to hoist that Jenica cleanly, not make any silly mistakes, and they should get across this finish line in first place. It's quite a gap back to Norddeutsche Regattaverein. Zach Quinlan out on the bow. Working behind him, Charlotte Alexander, and then her brother Finn Alexander working in the cockpit, and Dave Chapman steering the Australian boat. And Norddeutsche Regattaverein just get their Jenica set. They really need to turn on the afterburners. Might as well jibe, guys. Might as well try something else. But the Australians, they've already jibed, so that attacking move isn't open to the Germans. The Germans are now jibing, and they're not going to give up until they've seen those Australians cross the finish line. And actually, the Germans seem to have a little bit more breeze than Australia right now. Charlotte Alexander always looks so relaxed. You can never really tell what she's thinking. She always looks like she's having fun there.
Well, as I say, it's the place they want to be. Just constantly defending, looking back at that boat. They've got a big distance between them. It's a 20-metre sort of gap between these two boats. Again, anything can happen, and that can suddenly shorten down with a gust, and obviously the gusts are coming from when the Deutsche Regattaverein is going to get access earlier, so that is their playbook at the moment. But this will be the final jibe coming in towards that finish line. Here we go. This is the Australian team. They're soaking it down, trying to just narrow that distance before that jibe comes in.
Simultaneous jibes, Australia and Germany jibe at exactly the same time, but really it's running out of road for anyone else to be able to beat the Australians. In the middle of Europe, 24 teams, but the only team from outside of Europe is Australia. Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron, Dave Chapman, how happy is he? The Australians have won the Sailing Champions League 2019. 2 bullets in the 4-boat final. You can't say fairer than that.
Just a superb performance with them. We've seen them. They've been battling it out over the whole 3-4 days. Their bigger handshakes, that's all they can do on board Norddeutsche Regattaverein. The people that will have been hit hardest will be Kalavik Badalag, who are still coming in onto that side a bit. But otherwise, what a performance from Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron. Again, pressure applied. They seem to like that format. They went out with that race win. They stuck to a very similar strategy. All the boats were caught out on that second start, but they held on. They kept their cool. And as you said, Charlotte on board and all of the guys on board were all just looking really relaxed and enjoying their sailing. But commiserations for this team crossing line now. They were the ones that led in after 51 races on that sort of flight 17. But it has been the Australians that win, and what an amazing performance from them. And
it goes to show just what a different approach you needed to take. You predicted it beforehand. Winning these races requires an aggressive approach. Coming back to the start of that last race, Corky, I'm just gobsmacked that we didn't see 4 boats absolutely bang on the line at start time.
Well, no, but the funny thing is they were all in the same position. There wasn't one of them that suddenly was like, why are we all the way back here? Why, you know, not one clicked in of, we're a long way from this line. All 4 of them were there. And so, you know, in a way, it just seemed like the start line suddenly just got reversed back about sort of 2 boat lengths for where they were actually planning on being. But smiles on board there. Look at the team all looking very, very happy. Yes, as in your interview, you were chatting with Charlotte about they'll spend the same amount of time on the water as they will in the air flying back home again. But yeah,
they fly home with the trophy.
Well, and
4 Breitling
nice
watches.
watches. So hopefully that will see him on that upgrade. But very, very happy team and greatly deserved. And it really does open up the Sailing Champions League. You know, to have a team from down under come here. We really hope that rolling into next year that we will see more teams from other countries and really starting to come and have a crack at trying to hold on to
Well,
it.
it's got to be inspiring to everyone back in Australia and other parts of the region. Maybe New Zealand, we'll see teams from there in the future. League racing is really catching on around the world, and from a neutral perspective, if you're a fan of league racing, you didn't mind who was going to win, well, you wouldn't want a better team than this to win in terms of spreading the word. But right now, all that's on David Chapman, Finn Alexander, Charlotte Alexander and Zach Quinlan's mind is that they have come through 4 days of intense competition. They've held their nerve, and when the pressure was really on, they rose to the occasion. They won 2 billets out of 2 races in the 4-boat final, and there you have it. Equal points, but that doesn't matter. It's the race wins that matter. Norddeutsche Regatta Verein have to settle for second, where they look pretty happy with that as they cross the finish line. Kalavik battle out. They had a 4-point advantage going into the 4-boat final, but that was to nothing. They needed to win some races, which they didn't manage to do, so they finished 3rd. And the Royal Danish Yacht Club, previous winners of the Sailing Champions League, this time have to settle for 4th place. So the other thing I think that was motivating the Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron is that if you come second, you win the dead-on garden furniture. That's a lot of luggage to put on the plane. That's a lot of extra baggage.
It's not hand luggage, is it? It's not going in easily. So yeah, 4 watches are going to be a lot easier for them to carry back. But you know what a superb race. Like, you know, Sam Moritz this year has just turned it on for us over all of these days of racing. You know,
well, it's almost a bit like Sydney Harbour, isn't it?
Well, except a little less traffic, I guess. It's sort of, but it's, you know, it's an amazing to see. Sort of, we've had just probably the most beautiful final day to finish with here. Sunshine, wind, and, you know, but none of this would have happened without, you know, the race organisers and everybody involved. There's been a huge amount of stuff that's gone in behind the team, like from Craftwork to, Concept Verve, who have been the instigators behind all of this, from Sail Tracks to SAP to all of the sponsors. But everyone from the race committee, the jury, they've all played a huge part. And, you know, none of these sailors would be here and be racing as efficiently and as effectively as that. And of course, yeah, Sam Moritz, we've heard about this for many years, that the sun was going to come, the wind was going to come, and this year it's delivered on all formats. So no, been an absolutely superb way, and what a way to finish the Sailing Champions League 2019.
Well, Corky, I've got to run off and interview the winners, so I will be off shortly, but we will just show you this little thank you movie whilst I run off to interview the Australians who have just won.
It's just amazing to be here. Kraftwerk, my favorite tool.
It's great that they don't set up this lounge to bring all the sailors together.
The squad is on a mission now to win more Breitling watches.
We are from Australia, really enjoying sailing in St. Moritz in Graubünden. It's an amazing place to check out.
If you're ever in St. Moritz, make sure to visit Batteris Palace. It's absolutely amazing.
It's great to have SAP Sailing Analytics to improve our sailing and to run better.
It's great to have such a reliable supplier like Marinepool, Spirit of the Ocean.
When the pressure was on, the boys and girls from Down Under rose to the occasion. So, Dave Chapman, congratulations. 2 bullets from 2 wins in the final. I can't quite believe what we've just seen. What about you?
Yeah, no, it was a great day. Yeah, we didn't have our best day yesterday, and we all kind of regrouped, and we all knew what we did wrong, and just wanted to focus today, and made it to the top 4, which was the first thing to do, obviously. And then we spoke about just before the first race, hey, look, there's 2 young teams here, they're going to do some silly things, and the older guys, they're probably the team to beat, the KDY team. So we had 2 great starts and just were able to cover from there, so it was great.
You did have a good start in the last race, but Zach, I was sort of surprised. Was the rest of the fleet caught napping on the last start a little bit?
I think a little bit. We noticed that left shift come through early, and we just called racing about 40 seconds to go, just to make sure we're up on the line and watch the other teams follow suit soon after.
Now, Finn, you have now won Breitling watches. You do know that if you come second, it would have been some of that wonderful dead-on garden furniture. But had you started? Was that part of the pressure that you couldn't afford to put it on as extra baggage on the plane on the way home?
Oh, would have been nice to take some lounges home, sit back after a week of racing, but it's just one of those things you just got to put out of your mind, and we had a pretty simple objective, and that was just to go and win races, and just to come away with a win was really solid, and the whole team really came together well when we needed, and it just worked out well in the end for us. It was really good.
Charlotte, specialist marine footwear manufacturers around the world are in despair because you and your brother are proving that footwear is not the way to go when you're winning the Sailing Champions League.
Yeah, I mean, it works, so we'll keep doing it.
Well, it's a very good look, and at times it looked like Sydney Harbour out there, the shifts that were out there, the beautiful sunshine. How much do you, I'm still amazed that you don't really sail J70s back at home, but how much was it that switch into a more aggressive form of sailing that the 4-boat final required? How much of that switch of mindset played into your hands, do you think, David?
I think just the experience. Finn's won the youth worlds, and that helps a lot. I've won a lot of little things like this, and the match racing especially, and just that experience really helps. And I think the Danish kids were just a little bit too wound up. Like, we could hear them, any little mistake, you could just hear them yelling at each other. So, they'll gain a lot out of this, and these guys just did a great job. They were clutch today, so really happy.
And in terms of what you think this might do in terms of growing league sailing around the world, I mean, there were 24 teams here, 23 of them from Europe. The one team that wasn't from Europe was you, and now you've come to the centre of Europe and you're flying home with a trophy back to Australia. People will be sitting up and taking notice in Australia and other parts of Oceania. How much do you think your win will contribute to the growth of league sailing in other parts of the world?
Well, just a quick shout out to Hamilton Island Race Week, because I know a lot of people are there now watching. So, Hamilton Island could be a good place to have this kind of thing. Just shout out to the Oatleys there. But I think this is going to take off, really. It's such a great format, so easy. We can turn up, we can go sailing, we don't have to bring anything. Just bring your life jacket, bring your mates along and go for a yacht.
Well, you guys have been the perfect advert. Finn, David, Charlotte and Zach, many congratulations. You have gone and won the Sailing Champions League 2019.
Thank you. How long do we start? Keep going.
Oh, and we're still wrapping up from here. I'm sorry about that, folks. So, Corky, that was one hell of a finish that we saw just then. For you, over the last 4 days of competition, what has stood out for you? For me, I think it's the sunshine. It's such a beautiful change from last year.
Well, I think that's caught everybody off guard. Like, we've heard about it from the locals. Everyone's praised, said this will happen, and you couldn't have thought of a better sort of week to be here. They've been on the water, they've smashed through these flights. The conditions have been good, the sun's been here, the wind's been good, the organisation, the rotation of all the teams. That's what it's about. As a sailor, as a coach, I want to come and sail. I want to get on the water and do as much racing as I possibly can. And like they just said, with mates, come out here and race against a whole load of teams. The Sailing Champions League offers exactly that. You turn up, there's your boat, you get out in the most beautiful conditions with the best backdrop you possibly could have. And and you go racing and you go and tackle some of the best clubs in the world. And I think that's a done dusted. And what a way to finish with that format. You know, it's excitement all the way through. You can't let it slip. And I think all the sailors will completely agree with that. It's just a phenomenal format, and I just really hope, exactly, it inspires clubs, it inspires other people to turn around and go, we need a part of this, we need to be in this, and fingers crossed it will continue to grow.
There are so many innovations that we see the Sailing Champions League bringing in. I really like the different windward marks that we have a choice of, but also that 4-boat final. I hope that other parts of the sport are sitting up and taking notice, because the beauty of having the winner of the final race winning the regatta overall, as we saw just then, that for me is one of the great things about this format. I'm so pleased for the Australians. They've come here, they've never raced in the league before, so congratulations to them. And meanwhile, for you at home, thanks very much for watching over the last few days. We've loved bringing you the Sailing Champions League. We hope you've enjoyed watching it as much as we have, and we will be back to you next year for the Sailing Champions League in 2020.
Great. It was just great, and